Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Diary of a Wimpy Kid was the Harry Potter for people with taste. This, along with Goosebumps, were the book that got me into reading back in elementary school. And the fact that I haven't read anything since probably says something about either me or the education system. I was really into the series as a kid, and I know I wasn't the only one. The books were a massive success, selling more than 200 million copies globally as of January 2019. It has gone a long way from its humble start as a small webcomic on the educational site funbrain.com. The author, Jeff Kinney, clearly saw the potential of the concept, which was evident with the more than 80 million visits that website has to this day. So he seized the opportunity and created the book series we all know and love. As I said, I was obsessed with these books as a kid, so when I found out they were making a movie out of the books, well, it was just too much for my little idiot child brain. I couldn't believe it. It was almost as if it wasn't real. But it was. And I watched the hell out of it. However, as much as I loved the movies as a kid, the question is, do they still hold up? Well, Roger Ebert had to have given it a 3.5 out of 4 for a reason. The first film in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series came out in 2010 and was directed by Thor Freudenthal, known for directing these movies. So I know we're in good hands. The film centers on the titular Wimpy Kid that has a diary, Greg Heffley, and he is not a good person. I mean, he is the kind of kid who would make a popularity chart, and frankly put himself way too high. It's made clear that Greg thinks highly of himself while putting everyone else down. Even the diary, the basis of the whole series, was made so that people can read about his life when he becomes, quote, rich and famous, not if, when. Despite this, you still root for him. Why? Well, in order to answer this, we'll have to bring up the books first. In the books, Greg has little to no redeeming qualities, with many even going as far as to call him a sociopath. Of course, this isn't too much of a problem in a comedic series with random events making up the structure, but if you want to adapt that into a film, some changes are going to have to be made. One struggle that the filmmakers would face is the question of how would this book, which is largely made up of unconnected stories to have little impact on each other, would translate into the screen in a satisfying way. This is not to say that a random events plot is impossible in film, quite the opposite. However, this movie is not trying to be something like Dazed and Confused or Lady Bird, something like that. At the end of the day, this is a dumb kids movie that has to appeal to dumb kids, like me. It needs a connecting through line so that kids can follow the plot.
Can't just string episodes one after the other. You have to create a through line, and I felt that the relationship story between Greg and Rowley was that through line, was the backbone of the movie.
Each movie in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid cinematic universe takes a look at Greg's character through the lens of another character that Greg is close to. In the first movie's case, it's through Rowley Jefferson. Rowley can be seen as the perfect foil to Greg. He embodies everything that Greg is not, nice and sociable, but also childish and not very self-aware. They seem like they shouldn't be friends at all, but the actors Zachary Gordon and Robert Capron have such good chemistry, he really believes that they have been friends for a long time. The cast in general is amazing. I can't ever imagine the characters being played by anyone else. Gordon really embodies the selfish and cocky nature of the character while also being charismatic enough for the audience to root for him. Capron equally embodies this childish enthusiasm that's infectious as the Black Plague. This is not even mentioning Devin Bostic's charm and Steve Zahn's unhinged performance, but we'll burn that bridge when we get there. The first movie is a very realistic and down-to-earth portrayal of middle school life, all things considered. The commentary track points out how a lot of this film is made up of simple events that are blown up to match how a kid would perceive it.
Because ultimately, the movie deals with a lot of, very mundane, very simple things that are blown up inside kids' heads.
And this can be seen throughout the many stylistic choices made throughout the film. Of course, the obvious fantasy sequence that Greg has.
No. Vanilla on the bottom and chocolate on the top.
But there are also a lot more subtle things, such as when Rodrick is telling the boys a scary story, and the lighting gets all dark and moody. It's touches like these that really elevate the film. There's also the cheese. You can't talk about the movie without mentioning the cheese. This film was really good with presenting a setup and paying it off. The secret language.
I wait and say ocean is wait. Your paw, dad paw, smells paw like paw, a woman paw.
The game where Greg throws a football at Rowley. Colin.
Is that Coco?
Sorry, safety patrol only.
Sorry.
Do you have my back? I will always have your back, Captain.
However, none get more set up than the cheese. The cheese is something that has been mythologized by the students. The rule is simple. You touch the cheese, you get the cheese touch.
Daddy touched the cheese! No, I didn't. I just looked at it. Really?
And the only way to get rid of it is to pass it on to someone else. I feel like every school has had some bullshit like this that everyone acts like is more important than their parents' divorce. My school had the Jeremy touch, because we all fucking hated Jeremy. Anyways, the cheese had a super ominous presence that is felt throughout the movie. The scene transitions are not only a good way to mark the passage of time, but also makes a point to focus on the cheese, really hitting home the fact that, despite the fact that it's relegated to the background most of the time, you feel that this will pay off to something big later on. The teenagers play a similar role.
I'm gonna kick your butts!
They're introduced in the Halloween scene around the midpoint of the film. After Greg and Riley fail miserably in defending themselves against the bullies, resulting in them damaging the truck, the teenagers end up as a looming threat over them. However, opposed to the cheese, which is a more passive threat, the teenagers are a more active threat that are hunting them down. All this aside, the heart of the film is Greg's relationship with Riley. Before we get the big exposition dump opening, we get some establishing character moments with Greg. Here we see Greg rushing for school because of Rodrick's prank, but despite thinking that he's about to be late to school, he still takes the time to check himself out in the reflection of a pot. He still places great importance on his looks, and how he will be perceived by his classmates. In contrast, Riley's big establishing character moment has him unashamedly wear that colorful poncho. Riley doesn't care what his classmates think, he's just fine with being himself. As expected, these two values will butt heads several times throughout the film. The first example of this is through the extremely 80s motivational video, It's Awesome to Be Me, starring
Rock Brannigan, P.I.!
It's a very simple and cheesy be-yourself message that Greg, being the genius that he is, completely misinterprets.
I don't know about anyone else, but I know what I learned.
It is awesome to be me.
The problem with Rowley is that he's not enough like me.
So of course, Greg spends the next few minutes trying to fix Rowley. Because he's such a good friend. Then there's the safety patrol, which Greg only joins because he thinks it'll make him more respected. During one of his duties of walking the kindergartners, he thinks he sees the teenagers, so in an act of self-preservation, he dumps the kids into a ditch with the intent to hide there himself. It turns out they weren't the teenagers, and when he gets caught, he gets mistaken for Riley. Does Greg own up to his mistake?
Yes, Mrs. Irvine!
No. He pretends to be Riley and makes him get all the blame. Or how about when Greg breaks Riley's arm and loses the football game? Instead of feeling any sort of guilt, Greg feels jealous that Riley is getting attention and tries to cash in on it.
Hey, I'm the one who broke his hand.
Twice.
It's a raging infection caused by a splinter that was left untreated. Want to be the first to sign my sympathy sheet?
We perfectly see their opposing personalities in the comic-making contest. Greg's comment is very mean-spirited, dedicated to creating a character with the sole purpose of getting made fun of for his intelligence. Riley's, however, is a very simple comic that always ends with one punchline.
Sweet mama!
It's honestly no wonder that Riley's comic won over Greg's. And when Greg found out, he doesn't feel proud of his friend for winning, but gets immediately hostile.
I couldn't believe it. Am I the only one who gets comedy?
Soon enough, Riley gets suspended from the safety patrol for what Greg did, and it's only then that Greg confesses. Although as if it were a funny situation instead of something that deeply affected Riley.
Ready for the funny part? Well, I'm the one who terrorized those kids.
Here Riley reflects on all the shitty things that Greg did to him, and finally comes to the conclusion that we all already knew.
You know what, Greg? You're not a good friend. You hated my cartoon. You made fun of my clothes, you disrespected Joshy. You broke my hand and you didn't even seem sorry. Don't call me. Don't come by my house. We're done.
And like that, their friendship is over. This is a genuinely heartbreaking scene. You feel like you're witnessing two best friends finally breaking up after a long friendship. There's no one else but them. No background music. Just these two boys realizing how toxic their friendship is. And once Riley leaves, Greg is there all by himself. He lost the only person who put up with him. Anyways, The Wizard of Oz.
We three trees from
I'll admit that a lot of what comes after the scene is mostly filler, which is impressive considering the entire movie is filler. But yeah, with Riley out of the picture, there isn't much to explore with their friendship. We get a good start with Riley getting a replacement friend Colin. We get a good performance from Gordon pretending not to get angry about this.
As if I even care if he...
There's some stuff with Spragley I'd rather forget about, but that all gets sidetracked with the Wizard of Oz subplot. Not saying it's a bad subplot or anything, it's actually quite funny, but it largely feels inconsequential to the bigger story. Even the meaningless subplots before them have interactions between Greg and Rowley to build up their relationship. But things pick up once Greg gets Rodrick in trouble, culminating in the iconic "I'm sorry, woman" scene.
Do you have anything you want to say to women for having owned this offensive magazine?
I'm sorry, women.
Hey, y'all!
Greg starts to call Rowley, but then realizes he's not friends with him. Sad stuff. Then we have the big mother-son dance, which showcases that while Greg feels awful without Rowley, Rowley is a lot better off without Greg. If Greg wants to still be friends with Rowley, he has to get fixed. All this tension culminates in the big fight. It starts off small with Rowley asking for his game back, and escalates as Greg and Rowley's personalities clash for the final time.
It's my game. You know what? You wouldn't even have that game if I hadn't told you about it. You wouldn't have half the stuff you have without me. Yeah, like a broken hand. That was a million years ago. It clicks now. Hear that? Click, 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 click. And it's all your fault.
Their pathetic fight soon gets interrupted by the teenagers, who we have been anticipating throughout half the movie. And while trying to find a way to get payback, what did they notice? The cheese. The thing that was built up throughout the whole movie. Everything's coming together. The teenagers then make Rowley do something unspeakable.
Now eat it.
No.
Eat it or I'll shove the entire thing down your throat.
When they're about to make Greg eat some, they get chased away and the kids come back. They see the cheese with the bite mark. They see Rowley. They put two and two together. But then, Greg does something unexpected.
Rowley Jefferson ate. I ate the cheese.
Throughout the film, we always see Greg use others for his benefit, use the misfortune of others for self-gain, have other people take the blame for his actions. So when we see him take responsibility for the cheese, his one selfless act, we realize that he has finally taken the step in the right direction. Of course, he tries to give a big speech to try and make himself look better, but it doesn't matter.
Cheese touch! Greg Heffley has the cheese touch!
Students will still put too much importance on the most inconsequential things. So for once, Greg sacrifices popularity for his friend. And we see Greg and Riley finally enjoying each other's company, a friendship reconciled. Oh yeah, and Chloe Grace Moretz was there too.
You're not in it that much.
Wow, I said a lot of things for a mediocre kids movie from a decade ago. Anyways, Rodrick Rules. For Rodrick Rules, they passed over the reins of director from Thor Frudenthal to Fleshed Away director David Bowers, who will direct the remaining films. The change in directing can be immediately seen in the intro. While Frudenthal is a lot more personal and low-key with the style, Bowers wants to go bigger and better. The intro to Rodrick Rules takes place in a huge set piece, the roller rink. The production value has significantly increased from the first movie, even down to the animated segments, which are no longer this weird-looking CGI thing, but now this nice-looking paper cutout-esque flash animation. The scope has also increased from the first movie. Instead of largely taking place in the school and some houses, we see a lot more of the city and get larger set pieces. Along with the roller rink, we get a huge party, a mall, a talent show, each with tons of extras. While the increase in production value kinda lessens the quaint charm of the first movie, the film more than makes up for it in the story department. The story is now a lot tighter. Gone are the days of the random events that have no consequence to the plot. Instead, each scene plays a purpose into the greater narrative. Of course, any sane person who was watching a guy talk at length about Diary of a Wimpy Kid might ask, but what's the plot of this movie? Well, as I pointed out before, each movie explores Greg's character through the lens of his relationship with another character. And as the title might suggest, this movie focuses on Greg's relationship with Strog.
Strog?
Rodrick. Bostic perfectly portrays and even elevates the character of Rodrick Heffley.
Can you break a leg or something?
This movie lives and dies based on how believable the brotherly bond between Greg and Rodrick is, and I'm happy to say that the actors do an excellent job. It probably helped that they bonded in real life throughout the filming of the first movie. Rodrick is Greg's older brother and frequently acts as his bully.
Get in. Now.
So realistic to the general older brother. I would know. I am one. The intro not only excellently sets up each character and their deal, including Chirag's newfound role as the exposition guy who doxes people.
Her name is Holy Hills. She just moved here. What? I googled her.
But it also sets up Greg and Rodrick's relationship, with Rodrick humiliating Greg in front of hundreds of people. Later we get glimpses into how Rodrick affects Greg's life, even indirectly through the teacher's bias against him.
Greg Heffley, would you be related to Rodrick Heffley?
Right off the bat, we see that their relationship is not the best. This leads up to a masterwork of cinematic prowess. Greg sat on the chocolate and it looks like poop, so Rodrick reveals it to the entire church.
Poop! He's pooped his pants! Chocolate, see?
And they have a big fight scene. This is the inciting incident of the film, and it causes Susan to ground both Greg and Rodrick, causing them to have to spend time alone together. How terrifying. Of course, Rodrick does what I assume most teenagers do, I don't know, and sets up a party while his parents are away. And he does not want Greg to be a part of it, so he locks him in the basement.
Rodrick, help! The door's closed!
Yeah, and it's staying closed. I don't need a middle schooler ruining my party.
However, we start to see cracks in Rodrick's hard persona here. He starts to have moments of vulnerability. His party is lame, and his problem is exacerbated when Susan calls. Greg comes to cover Rodrick's ass as long as he gets to join the party. Rodrick reluctantly agrees, and with the help of Rowley, the party actually gets revitalized. We get a cool photo montage, and it's the next day. They fix up the house just in time, right before their parents come back. Now they have a shared secret. This is the point where they finally start to get along, but it was not meant to last. Rodrick teaches Greg to deny everything when asked.
What they ask you, no matter how hard they push, deny, deny, deny.
Something he immediately fails at when Susan starts questioning.
It was Rodrick. He made me use his idea. He had the party. Someone wrote on the door, so we had to change it.
However, he convinces her to keep quiet, and a house of cards is forming. Tension rises as the brothers bond, because we know that it will all topple over once something slips. Oh, by the way, remember the cool photo montage?
Rodrick, can you explain what you're doing in this photo?
That's not me.
Okay. How about these?
The house of cards topple. All the bonding is undone. And when Rodrick says this,
You're my brother. She'll never be my friend.
you really feel it. The story detours into the retirement home. Greg and Rodrick's relationship is at the lowest point it's ever been. It's pretty awkward. Holly Hills is there. She's the character, I guess. It's kind of cool how they bond over their weirdly similar siblings.
Let me guess. He was pretending to laugh at something that wasn't actually funny.
How'd you know?
It's in the older sibling handbook. I also have a little sister who's spoiled rotten.
Tell me about it.
Anyways, the main point of this scene is so that Rodrick can obtain an embarrassing tape of Greg, so that he can use to blackmail him. Simple. Anyways, the talent show. This is built up throughout the whole movie. Rodrick wants to get his band noticed through it. But, you know, the thing happened.
We're also not allowing you to perform in the talent show.
So now he can't perform. Unless... There's a running gag in this film where Rowley is gonna perform a magic show, but he keeps having problems with his assistant. On the day of the talent show, he gets cold feet, so Rowley needs a new assistant.
Daddy, come on.
It's here where Greg does his selfless act of the movie. He makes a deal to Susan that he will assist Rowley and face embarrassment as long as Rodrick gets to perform.
You let Rodrick play in the talent show. I'll do the magic thing with Rowley.
The magic show turns out to be a hit, which isn't as impactful as the first movie's cheese incident, since Greg still faces public shame there, but whatever. We are then treated to perhaps the most awe-inspiring example of songwriting and composition that has graced the human ear.
We are loading diapers!
And that's the movie. We even get a resolution to the whole Greg wants to go viral subplot that I decided not to mention because...
Wake up in the morning, drunk pee-pee.
Overall, this movie felt like a vast improvement from the first. While it didn't get as much of the quaint moment-by-moment feel of the first movie, this movie more than makes up for it with the tighter story and emotional core of the brothers' relationship, which was portrayed amazingly by the cast. Alright, the next book to be adapted here has to be The Last Straw, right? Right? Alright, so for the next movie they decided to skip The Last Straw and go straight to Dog Days. But it's not as simple as that. You see, while yes, this movie is called Dog Days, it takes place in the summer and takes a lot of the beats from the book. There's also a significant amount of screen time dedicated to adapting The Last Straw. This can also be seen with the title sequence, where the words are colored green instead of yellow. I believe the reason for this is that The Last Straw treads a lot of old ground with the school setting, so in order to switch it up, they decided to combine it with Dog Days to give it a summer setting. Another thing you'll notice with this is that the actors are looking old. I guess there's not much you can do about that. So, because of this would have to be the last film in the trilogy. It's been a good run. Anyways, one of the most important aspects that was lifted from The Last Straw was the focus on Greg's relationship with his dad, Frank. It's now Steve Zahn's time to shine.
Ha! Guess who's the laugher now?
Frank was always a fun character to watch. With his unhinged personality, he always seems like he's gonna snap. So an entire movie focused on him will be nothing short of a delight. Unfortunately, a large chunk of this movie is dedicated to the plot involving Greg infiltrating the country club. This plot largely boils down to a big generic liar revealed plot. Oh yeah, Holly Hills is back. Anyways, I feel like the country club stuff really detracts from the movie, which is sad because the scenes involving Greg and Frank are genuinely great, and I wish I could see more of it. See, in Rodrick Rules, while the main crux of the story centers on the party, it doesn't actually take up that much screen time. The film mostly revolves around the tension and fallout after the party. In this film, you see Greg have fun at a country club, and you just wait until the inevitable moment when Frank finds out Greg isn't actually working.
What are you talking about? He works here. Tell him.
There must be some mistake. We don't employ minors.
I feel like I'm being too harsh on the film. I do still like it, but it doesn't quite meet the heights of the other two films. There are still aspects to it I really like. I like Spag Union and their ever-present threat to Greg. I like how in contrast to Greg's stack of lies, Riley is a terrible liar.
Actually, I'm not going to the country club today.
Riley once again serves as a foil, so when he lies, it's genuinely surprising.
You lied. You never lie.
Speaking of foils, Riley's family serves as a perfect foil to Greg's, in that they are super affectionate towards each other to a sickening degree. We really see this showcased when Riley gets in trouble, and all his parents did was say that they're disappointed.
Very disappointed.
Greg doesn't see this as a big deal, but Riley is devastated.
They let us off easy.
But then we get a call back to the scene once Frank finds out about Greg's lie. Frank tells Greg that he's disappointed, and Greg realizes how this can feel worse than any punishment he can receive.
Aren't you mad?
No. I'm just disappointed.
Obviously, this isn't a Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie without Greg's big act of selflessness. And we see it during the camping trip scene. Greg really wants to make it up to his dad, and his way of doing it is to prank the troop that was giving them a hard time. Of course, the plan doesn't go as expected, but the troop still gets exposed for being a sham.
What is that? A store-bought s'mores maker? A TV? Pre-tied knots! Stan, you're a phony.
Fun hijinks. However, where the movie really shines is the scene right after, the motel scene. It's just a quiet moment between father and son, discussing what happened, expressing their opinions, just talking.
You're a really great kid, Greg.
just saying that because we're a lot alike.
And the scene is so impactful because of how natural it all feels. This is the heart of the movie. This small, insignificant talk. A moment of genuine father-son bonding. I just wish we had more of this kind of thing in the film. So Rodrick sings Baby at the end, so I think that makes up for it.
Baby, 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 oh!
I feel like I don't have as much to say about this film as the others. That's not to say that it's a bad film. It just doesn't have as much of the aspects I love from the first two films. While not perfect, hell, none of the movies are. I feel like this is as good as place of any two in the series. We saw the kids grow up before our eyes, and I think it's a good time to move on. A trilogy that can compete with the likes of The Godfather, Back to the Future, and Lord of the Rings. But no. The long haul blows. I feel like everyone knows this at this point. It's a Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie in name only. All the charm from the previous films is absent here, leaving what basically amounts to a soulless product to entertain the kiddies. Not that the previous movies were masterpieces or anything, even though they are, but you can still feel that camaraderie and genuine bond between everyone who worked on the film. It's odd that it turned out like this, considering David Bowers came back to direct this, but it makes more sense when you look at everyone who didn't come back. Yes, obviously the cast was replaced, but we'll talk about that later. The first two films had the same two writers, and they are the best films in the franchise. Dog Days replaced them with two other writers, and it wasn't as strong but still solid. Now in the long haul, the writers were replaced again by Bowers himself and Jeff Kinney. I guess he's not as good at screenplays as he is at children's books. Anyways, in the commentary track for Rodrick Rules, it's revealed that Bowers is responsible for a lot of the gross-out humor of the films.
We just saw a minute ago Greg with a piece of gum in his mouth, and I have to give credit where credit is due, as that was a David Bowers special, is what I called them, as little gags that David threw in to spice it up, and I love those moments.
You know, the stuff that isn't funny. So get him to write an entire film, and this is what you get.
Diaper! It's a diaper! It's a diaper! It's a diaper!
What about the new cast? I hear all you shouting. Alright, the new cast. They suck. Not to say that the acting in the first three movies were amazing or anything, but it's still leagues above this. But I don't want to blame the actors for this. An actor's performance is largely a result of their direction and their character's writing, after all. And these characters have been bastardized to hell. Firstly, Greg no longer has the smug aura and charm. He feels more like a generic kid character.
That's how Jimmy do it. Classic.
Frank is now a boring dad who works and whatever.
Hi, Julie, yes.
He no longer has that unhinged personality. Susan is a lot more annoying, and you don't feel any of the motherly kindness that defined her character.
I have failed as a parent.
And Rodrick probably got it the worst.
Hey, pal. You just blowing from Stupid Town?
In the previous films, he was this cool older brother character who, while not the sharpest ball in the drawer, still has tons of charm and presence to make up for it. Here, all that charm is stripped away, and they turn him into a bumbling fool.
Rodrick, that's a mini safe.
Huh. And they disguised it as a microwave.
Bostic's Rodrick may be dumb, but he isn't this stupid. These changes in characters are just symptoms of a larger issue. The film is now a lot more cartoonish and wacky. Yes, the other films had their outlandish moments and set pieces, but they were always balanced by the more down-to-earth character moments and relatively simple plots. Those films were never afraid to slow down and let the characters just talk to each other. No frills. This film just feels like jangling keys in your face. A barrage of unfunny gag after unfunny gag.
Never seen so many dorks in one place before.
It's scared that it will lose attention of the kids, which is kind of insulting to the intelligence of them, and it shows with the box office, the lowest performing movie in the series. Goes to show that even kids have taste. Anyways, I guess I have to talk about the plot or something. The Heffleys go on a road trip, Little Miss Sunshine style, except that's a good movie. As I said before, every movie before this focuses on Greg's relationship with someone, and this film focuses on the relationship with Susan. What's their conflict? Greg likes technology and gaming. Susan doesn't.
No phones, no iPads, no internet. Everyone, hand over your devices.
You tricked us!
Riveting. Yeah, Dog Days has a similar conflict with Greg and Frank, but their conflict goes deeper than that. It's a fundamental conflict between Frank wanting to impose his work ethic and ideal family on Greg, who is lazy and wants to spend his summer relaxing. The conflict here does not go any deeper than Susan thinking that technology is bad. We hardly see any characterization of Greg here. He is almost never in the wrong, except for that one time that he redirects the GPS so he can see some Let's Player.
That's what Nicky doing!
In previous movies, we see Greg do a lot of shady things that he ends up getting called out for, and he learns and grows from those mistakes. Here, he barely does anything. He hardly makes any decisions, let alone shitty ones. He's a passive character to his own movie. To give an example of this, let's examine the ever-present threat of this movie, the Beardos.
I'm gonna get you, punks!
The Beardos. They have a similar role that the teenagers did in the first film,
I'm gonna kick your butts!
but they have many key differences. First, the age, which may seem minor, but it's kind of weird that a fully grown man wants to beat up a child.
I know you're out there, kid! I will find you!
But the main issue with them is what caused them to pursue Greg in the first place. In the first movie, while the teenagers did start the whole thing, it was Greg who made it worse. The teenagers were about to leave Greg, but Greg threatened to call the cops.
We're calling the cops!
Which made them angry. It was Greg who damaged their truck, which made them angrier. The point is, Greg caused all of his own problems. Here, Greg goes out to tell some kids to be quiet. The kids ram the car into Beardo's truck and blame it on Greg. Greg has done absolutely nothing to cause a conflict. A conflict just happens to him. Anyways, I don't want to talk about this movie any more than I need to. I don't really like talking about bad movies, so I'll just get some points out of the way. Almost none of the side characters return, and Riley barely makes a presence. Which makes sense, but I missed him, you know? Rodrick throws up CGI vomit at the screen, and it falls the wrong direction. There's a cute pig. Look at him. Manny learns Spanish.
Nombre is Manny Hefley.
From the Spanish class CD that we see earlier in the film.
Hello, hi. Hi is simply hola in Spanish.
I guess that's a callback, but also Manny learns Spanish. This movie also has a thing where it references movies that are way better than it, especially the latter half. The Hills Have Eyes.
Like this. I saw a movie once where a bunch of mutant hillbillies led a group of tourists off the main road.
Saving Private Ryan and Mad Max Fury Road get mentioned.
You look like that one chick from Mad Max.
Charlize Theron?
No.
But the most obnoxious is the Psycho reference, which is just a recreation of the shower scene that is just there for no reason. It serves no purpose other than to reference Psycho. The saddest part is that it looks better than the rest of the film. So yeah, all in all, this movie just doesn't work. A Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie lives and dies through its characters. And unlike the previous entries, the characters are a lot less likable now. At best, they're boring, and at worst, they're Rodrick. This movie is dumb, annoying, and I feel exhausted after watching it, and not in a good way. And it's best left skipped if you ever want to watch the Diary of a Wimpy Kid movies. For some reason. Oh yeah, I also saw the animated movie. Anyways, I don't want to end this video on a low note, so I'll just say this. Diary of a Wimpy Kid was an important part of my childhood. It was an important part of everyone's childhood. I mean, look at all the memes and fan content still being made to this day. My personal favorite being Greg Heffley and the ballistic missile. I didn't even mention the movie book, which taught me a lot about what goes into making a film as a kid. And it doesn't seem like the franchise is going to die out anytime soon, as they're still pumping out books. So at the end of the day, what was the point of this video? Why did I decide to ramble on for about 30 minutes about Diary of a Wimpy Kid? I don't know. But you still watched it, didn't you?